Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. Narendra Modi says that winning and losing are part of politics. But is this as simple as that? Because by looking at the outcomes of the general elections that happened in India, what has been the strength? The Bharatiya Janata Party, of course, the Prime Minister of which was Narendra Modi. And now he's also expected to form the government for a consecutive third term. But is the case going to be as simple as has been described by Narendra Modi? Let me quickly bring in the numbers. Out of 543 seats of the Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Indian Parliament, we have seen two major alliances were facing off each other. The one that is National Democratic Alliance, that is led by Bharatiya Janata Party, that was able to grab only 293 seats. Now, when specifically talking about Bharatiya Janata Party alone, it was able to grab 240 seats. But looking at the number this time around, Bharatiya Janata Party has grabbed, it is quite lower as compared to the numbers it grabbed back in 2019. 303 seats at that particular time. Considerable a downward path it has come to in 2024 elections. 63 seats down for Bharatiya Janata Party. And it is pertinent to mention over here that 272 seats majority is required to form the government in the Lok Sabha, the Indian lower house of the Parliament. We'll also taking up for discussion the special case of Uttar Pradesh that carries along 80 constituencies, the highest number of the constituencies, and it is considered as the ideological stronghold of Bharatiya Janata Party. Back in 2019, there was a huge considerable chunk of constituencies which were taken by Bharatiya Janata Party and the alliance it was part of. This time it was expected the aspirations as far as Bharatiya Janata Party and its allied parties are concerned, that they are going to have a thumping victory in this particular constituency, which is considered its ideological stronghold, but the results speak quite to the contrary. Also, specifically talking about an interesting constituency, Faizabad constituency, the home to recently inaugurated Ram Temple. Bharatiya Janata Party has lost this particular constituency. Also, when we talk about the opposition alliance that is known as India, led by Indian National Congress, the alliance as a whole has been able to grab 232 seats, quite a greater number this time around. As far as the performance of Congress is concerned, Congress was able to grab alone 99 seats. So that is 47 constituencies up from its previous performance back in 2019, in which it grabbed 52 seats. We'll also be talking about as to what led to this considerable improvement in the performance of the Congress during this Lok Sabha election. When we talk about the expectation that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is once again going to take oath as the new Prime Minister of India, is it going to be as simple as that, or is it going to be something uncertain, or could there be a play of element of surprise? Because there are certain political parties which became the part of NDA alliance just sometimes before the start of the elections formally were with the Congress. Is there any sort of element of surprise that could be at play before Saturday? Also, when we talk about the Varanasi constituency where Prime Minister Narendra Modi contested, we have seen a considerable drop in the margin by which he won back in 2019, and this time around it has been considerably reduced. So that naturally makes us question about the popularity of Narendra Modi in India. Is Narendra Modi still and equally popular for Indians? The answers to all these questions in today's discussion. In the studio, we're honored to have been joined by Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, expert in international relations. Dr. Kausar, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Asma Shakir, Khawaja, Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Dr. Asma, thank you very much for your time. Also for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Kausar. Now, winning and losing are part of politics. That's been stated by Narendra Modi. Is the case as simple as that? What's your understanding?
Thank you, first of all, for having me on your show. I guess this was a big surprise in many ways, not only to the BJP, but of course to the larger population and the experts particularly. Many new revelations and realities emerged up. I mean, there are two, three things which we need to understand. First, of course, there is a factor of incumbency which is there, but the way the BJP shaped the electoral campaign, it was like a fait accompli for them to win election, and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be the third time Prime Minister. Of course, right now they are in a position to make the government, but there are certain facts that we need to understand. One, I guess we need to see that people of India, particularly larger constituencies, if you see that the way BJP framed the electoral campaign and the agenda, particularly, that was more on division and of course communalization and domination of certain religion, and of course against the minorities. People didn't accept that. That's one takeaway from that. The other, we need to see that the fault lines within. If you see, there have been a lot of the core agenda of BJP from last decade or more is the centralization of power, particularly within India. And with that centralization, if you see, there have been a lot of curbs on media. There have been a lot of, and of course there's now open debate, in fact, that there has been a lot of entrenchment of BJP, particularly in the state institutions. And for that matter, you can see the Election Commission and their whole machinery didn't take the notice of the inflammatory and discriminatory campaigning, for that matter, as well. That, I guess, also resonated and people resisted and reacted to that. Third, over the period of time, if you see that BJP has reduced actually the spaces of formal institutions of the feedback, particularly. If you see over the period of time, people like in New Delhi came for the march. If you see, people took the platforms, informal platforms, and informal movements have been there, showing that there is a distrust, and in formal institutions like Parliament is not accepting their genuine demands. So I guess this time, particularly on the other side, the India Alliance tried to tell one important thing is that this is the matter of democracy, this is the matter of Constitution of India. I guess that resonated well within the people of India. One, that's the important thing to understand. So Rahul Gandhi have been campaigning, maybe India Jodo Yatra and other things. I guess this has clicked. And then of course the local issues, particularly if you see this division, the vote secured by India Alliance is more in rural areas. The overall development mantra and all the jargons, I guess it didn't go down well to the grassroots. The inflation, and there is a factor of young people as well, those who sort of disassociated and disengaged from the very hatred and very politically charged campaign of BJP. So I guess there are many factors, but the fundamental and the core factor is that people didn't buy that idea of BJP, particularly if you see, now we have also mentioned about Ram Mandir. I mean, the core of their campaign right now was also the Ram Mandir construction, and the way they tried to bring in, allure in their far right constituency into that. I guess losing from Faizabad constituency itself is the manifestation that people didn't buy that idea actually.
So I'll come back to you to have your deeper understanding regarding this particular very interesting constituency, the Faizabad constituency. There was by far no expectation on the part of the BJP and Narendra Modi of losing this particular constituency. Let me quickly proceed towards Dr. Asma. Dr. Asma, when we talk about the number of constituency grabbed by Bharatiya Janata Party this time around, 240, 63 down from that back in 2019. How bigger a setback is it to already made claims by Bharatiya Janata Party that they were eyeing to grab at least 400 seats in association with their allies, and its aspirations, and also the kind of narrative it has actually based its election campaign on?
Yeah, this is a very important question. And several critic or scholars of Indian studies, they are saying that Modi still, BJP is the single largest party in the Indian parliament, and still they are in position with the help of their allies to form a government. So why why it is important and why to cherish that Congress and the India alliance under Congress has made a comeback. So here the thing is that Modi started or BJP started its electoral campaign on the promise that this time they are going to win more than 400 seats in the Indian Parliament. And as you know, their electoral slogan or rhetoric based on "Ab ki baar 400 par." So first of all, every student of South Asian studies or this electoral politics, they are analyzing or comparing the seats BJP is able to get in comparison with what they were expecting. Why they were expecting it? Number one, Modi built the electoral rhetoric on anti-Muslim politics, Islamophobia, minority, Modi's policies against minorities, and rise of Hindu Rashtra. Those were the dreams BJP under Modi tried to sell to Indian public. And why it is important that Modi is not even able to sustain its seats, what BJP got in 2019, and as you said, there is a considerable decrease in it. So it means that Indian public refuse to buy those Islamophobic ideas and of Hindu Rashtra coined by Modi regime. And then above all, if we see that 2019 elections, Modi conducted false flag operations to create a sense of insecurity and perception of insecurity, the quest for survival vis-a-vis Pakistan to gain votes, and this strategy was successful. This time, Modi's strategy was based on anti-Muslim politics, rhetoric, anti-minorities, and as a result, you can see that in Manipur, in Nagaland, in Kashmir, in Punjab, so you see that people loudly bluntly expressed their displeasure for the BJP's aggressive policies based on violence and fear. So this is why these election results where BJP is, which are not even providing face saving to BJP, talking about 400 seats and getting 240 as a party. BJP got those seats. So this shows that the sensibility of Indian public was is still functional. If you remember the slogans Modi used, that Muslims would do this and that, and they are infiltrators, and they would, but here it is very important to mention that Congress is no different. The Congress, we all know the worst atrocities against minorities were conducted, operationalized during Congress regime. 1984, the Sikh genocide, the atrocities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the Seven Sisters, the atrocities against Tamils, all those were happened during Congress regime. So we were talking about BJP not getting what they were expecting is not like something supporting Congress. And above all, you see that the way the pre-poll rigging by BJP, the freezing the accounts of opposition parties, putting their leaders in jails, and all those electoral bond scam, and then false exit polls just to create a perception among public that they should join the herd and vote for BJP because BJP is coming. And for me, it is really only if BJP and under Modi realizes that two leaders, one the Kashmiri leader engineer Rashid, and second the Sikh leader Amritpal Singh, they fought their elections with from within the jails while facing the brutality, atrocities of Indian government. They fought those elections and they won by like hundreds of thousands of votes margin. It is they didn't have a slight uh, uh, um, a nominal victory with few thousand votes, but hundreds of thousands of votes. So this shows, and this is the time, if Modi is wise and mature and intelligent as he pretends to be, he should analyze the shortcomings, the wrong policies of BJP, because Indian public didn't fell prey to the Citizen Amendment Act, the revocation of Article 370, the subjugation of Kashmiris, the subjugation of Sikh minorities. They stood against that. The Indian
So, right,
public
your
stood
point is well
against that,
taken.
and that
Your
is
point is,
why.
Dr. Asma, your point
Yeah.
is well taken when you talk of
Okay.
Congress being no different than that of Bharatiya Janata Party. Some of the worst atrocities against the minorities committed during the tenure of Congress. So where the minorities in India should actually look up to, which suits them the best, to have Bharatiya Janata Party in the government or the Congress and its allies in the government? I'll come back to you with this very question. Let me bring in another panelist. We are honored to have been joined in the studio by Air Vice Marshal retired Ijaz Malik, senior analyst. Mr. Malik, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Are you surprised by these results of the Indian Lok Sabha elections? There was a claim and an aspiration on the part of Bharatiya Janata Party to grab 400 plus seats, 370 on its own and 30 plus something coming from allies, making it above 400. But surprisingly 240 this time around as compared to the previous time, 303 back in 2019, 63 down from the last time. Isn't it a big blow to its
It
aspirations?
is definitely
narrative?
a big dent to the electoral strength of BJP and the allies. But I wouldn't say that we were surprised, because in run-up to election and then because it was in various multiple phases, so there were indications of this change of winds. And why has it happened? That's the question. And what possible implication would be on the Indian internal political dynamics, and possible impact on the their relationship in the region. First of all, it clearly signifies that the narrative which had been built over years with passing successfully 2 consecutive tenure in government, the narrative which was built this is a counter offensive against that narrative of that silent electoral segment of the society. I think apparently because of the oppression and generally blatant misuse of authority, massive amendments in the certain acts and procedures, getting hold of certain administrative areas which could possibly give them some advantage for the election. So people have actually shown their resentment through ballot box. So I think.
Okay, so Mr. Malik, when we talk about, there is an interesting case of Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and Bihar as compared to the Uttar Pradesh. Now, as far as resentment is concerned, particularly of the youth, there are many voices that are speaking about that resentment, that anger, particularly among the young population in Uttar Pradesh. That's why this time around Bharatiya Janata Party wasn't able to show the same performance as compared to 2019. Now, talking about Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and Bihar, BJP has almost got all the seats. Odisha 20 out of 21, 21
Yes.
out of 25 in Andhra Pradesh, 29 out of 29 in Madhya Pradesh and Bihar. Wasn't there any resentment among the people there in those
No,
states?
there would be. It just matters that in certain areas they have been able to create the opponent parties. They have been able to mobilize those segments which were either these kind of swing vote, you could say, or the people who were not having in line with the government policies, or they felt suffocated with all those administrative arrangements. But I think this has also something to do with the overall change which was being pursued and cherished by BJP, and that was of Hindutva, that was of marginalizing the very essence of a secular India. So undercurrents, there were people both in urban areas as well as in the rural areas where the Congress had relatively better vote in their favor. So there was a realization that the India of Nehru and Gandhi's, that's being compromised by BJP and Mr. Modi, and probably now is the time to give a chance back to Congress, so that maybe there is a revival of the status of Indian and democratic.
But Congress wasn't able to grab enough seats in order to form the government at its own, right? But I'll come back to you to understand the performance this time around of Congress, which was, of course, much better as compared to back in 2019. Dr. Kausar, now the case of Uttar Pradesh in particular, considered as the ideological stronghold. Last time around, Bharatiya Janata Party was able to grab 62 out of 80 seats alone, 2 from allied parties, making it 64 that time around. This time around, from 62, it has fallen down to 33 seats, Bharatiya Janata Party. Quite a considerable dent from this particular. So when we talk about the ideological stronghold of Bharatiya Janata Party, given the fact there was inauguration of the Ram Temple, that Faizabad constituency also lost when we talk Bharatiya Janata Party. Was it considered ever the swing state before or during the elections? Or would it be considered now a swing state after such type of results have come forth?
See, the thing which was quite surprising was the entire edifice of BJP's political campaigning during this election was built around one important point of this Ram Mandir, as we discussed. And having that inauguration and bringing the religious and cleric and then all the the industry people into that inauguration and trying to gather that political support. Actually, this was quite surprising. But to me, the important point is where the BJP, if you analyze and if you see their governance structure and style particularly, of course it is a centralized, but it's a very top-down approach that they have been following and pursuing from last decade. The problem with Narendra Modi itself is that he tried to portray himself both political and religious leader simultaneously. If you see his entire campaigning, his entire journey of Indian politics is that he tried to sort of brought in the religious factor, tried to portray himself as a messiah near to somebody getting that spiritual and divine inspirations. And I guess with that cult and with that personality cult, it's impossible and it's difficult to resist and have the feedback and the differences or maybe sort of create a feedback loop from within. That's why there were many rumors during the election and before that within BJP there is a lot of resistance, let's suppose RSS and BJP's differences on those things. There is one thing. The other is, of course, I also look into that dimension that BJP's government particularly has failed to address the socio-economic questions of the Indian population as well. No matter you have the bigger economy, GDP and all that, but your youth, the trickle-down effect to the grassroots, it had not, materialized in that way. The unemployment ratio, the inflation, the other things, and the governance. And then when you have a very very centralized, controlled governance without feedback mechanism, people go to the alternative platforms, and that happened. The panelists mentioned about Citizenship Act. If you see the farmer protest and all that, people took alternative avenues to express themselves. If you see the media, the opposition was barely, the campaign was there in their media. Of course, it was quite state controlled. The first time, if we see the state machinery and then the government state institutions were interfering and there were a lot of complaints against them. So people, I guess, didn't succumb to these strategies. They took alternative platforms, they took alternative institutions, and then they, of course, expressed their views in the elections. Importantly, if you see even when you talk about the Congress, what they have gained, but in many constituencies when there was a head-on sort of collision between BJP and Congress gained this time. Now the question is, BJP lost, of course, in many constituencies. It has considerably reduced as compared to the last elections. The important factor and the important point need to be considered is that Indian National Congress, its other allies, they've been given space. Particularly the strategy of the Congress was to give them space, and the regional parties again came up something like a big factor. And now if you see that what we are talking about, that Nitish Kumar and Naidu, they like a kingmaker, where they will go, there will be Indian government. So what I want to say is that to just conclude this argument is that it's of course ideologically people didn't buy that thing, but for people the most pressing and important thing is of course their personal freedom, political freedom, and also the socio-economic and other indicators. And BJP with this sort of very centralized, very very controlled government, and then the mix of religion, it's difficult to resist. And then people at the end of the day, the only forum for them to resist and respond to the elections, and they did that.
That particular argument is very much understandable, where there was a dent for Bharatiya Janata Party. What about these states, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh and Bihar?
Now, BJP, I mean, has its own constituency. It has, of course, the factor of incumbency, but on the other side, it is a very massive, it has a very stalwart. But on the other side, if you see, almost more than 15 members of their cabinet have lost. A very prominent political figures have also lost that. So, I mean, you just imagine, you have to see from that perspective that it was aiming for 400 plus, and not them, their media, there are other many political think tanks, influential people. We are seeing from that context where BJP was thinking that it's a fait accompli for them. So, it's, I mean, right now in the entire campaigning, the election was not seen as something important for them. It was something understood that Modi would come there and he would do all these miracles, that what he was promising. But the surprise was the number of seats and then the gain of the political and of course the opposition parties.
Right. Dr. Asma, when we talk about there could be, do you think there could be an element of surprise when the Bharatiya Janata Party is going to form the government, because the two main allies, the Telugu Desam Party grabbing 16 seats and Janata Dal United taking 12 seats. So they joined that NDA alliance just sometime before the commencement of the elections, formally in alliance with the Congress. Is there a possibility that these two parties could change their direction and could switch sides just before the formation of the government, and there could be a possible difficulty for Bharatiya Janata Party to form a government?
Yeah, not only these smaller parties, they are asking for really important portfolios like this portfolio of speaker and the interior minister. And while we were discussing in the results of Indian elections, I just read the news that the NDA unanimously expressed their trust in Modi's leadership. So I don't think that right now those parties would do any there would be any problem in Modi coming back to power for the third time. But later on, a coalition government means that Modi's regime would be standing on a slippery slope. It would be difficult, maybe, for Modi to fulfill all the promises he has made to the allies parties and to keep to meet the expectations of those allies, and then the internal pressure into those regional political parties from within their own system to not to sail through a sinking ship, which right now BJP is looking like. So definitely it would be a problematic thing. But if we see the I was reading an article and it says that when the exit polls were happening and media was asking public that what do you think, who you are going to vote, that was the time when no one would this shows the level of fear inculcated by Modi regime among Indian public, that no common man would tell on the TV screen, on the camera, that whom they are going to vote, and maybe they would not tell to their friends or family members out of fear. But within the polling booth, they would decide that what change they want to bring, and that exactly that happened. That within in the polling booth, Indian public decided that they are not going to give a clean chit to Mr. Modi, because as my Vardi colleague said, that Modi regime didn't talk about the actual issues which a common man is suffering from, which is the highest unemployment ratio, which is the bad governance, which is corruption, which is lack of civic facilities, and people going down the poverty line, and the high inflation in India. Because every time in 2014 and in 2019, Modi was successfully able to divert public's attention from the real issues to the delusional issue of survival inculcated through fear by Modi. So this time he also thought that if he would raise his fingers towards Pakistan or nuclear weapons or Muslims as some infiltrators or robbers, so that would be enough to fool Indian public into voting for BJP. But this didn't happen this time, because all those things works when people have this economic satisfaction. And I believe that Ram Mandir, all those magnificent cosmetic acts which Modi did to make Indian public feel good about themselves and their country, such as the G20 summit, and the above all the extraterritorial killings which Modi regime conducted across the globe, only to make Indian public feel that they are chauvinists, they are macho, and they are the kingmakers, and they have capability to execute the opponent voices across the globe. And this was another reason that how the fear was inculcated in all those who were critique of Modi regime. But all that didn't work for BJP this time, and that is a sea of relief for the neighboring countries, because Modi, out of this illusion of being the, as I'm sure you know, all of us know, that during the electoral campaign, Modi again even claimed that he is a non-biological entity. So he has been sent by the god. So he left no stone unturned to make Indian public believe that Modi is the god which is here to make India the greatest nation. But all those claims
But
were
of course, he has been
not
cut
compatible
down to
with the
size, his
ground
party, and he's
realities.
been cut down to size this time around by the Indian public this time around. So, Mr. Malik, when we talk about this constituency of Varanasi, a considerable reduction in the margin by which Modi won the last time back in 2019 and this time around. Now, this time around, 152,000 votes margin. Back in the days in 2019, it was 480,000, considerably cut down to size, not only in his own constituency, but also as far as the party's standing is concerned. This time, even if he's able to form the government with allies, is not going to have that kind of a freedom he earlier enjoyed during the tenure from 2019 to up till now. So what are going to be the major challenges, other than keeping the allies intact, but giving the most important portfolios as per their visions and whims? What are going to be the other challenges?
Even if you see the past history of Indian coalition governments, they have always been on a very fragile standing. And now there will be two challenges. I understand that obviously they will form the government, but the challenges right from the day one, once they are sworn in, would be to keep their allies intact and happy. Obviously their demands they have started to already come in, and they will continue to increase, and that will be a permanent pressure on BJP. And secondly, it depends how well the other parties led by Congress perform as opposition group within parliament and outside parliament, because of last almost a decade of rule by BJP, they were considered, or they were portrayed as being marginalized in their own constituencies or in their own vote bank. But now that they have been granted a space by the voters, it is up to them, up to the wisdom and vision and operational management of their political leadership, that how well they regain and sustain and then improve this political space that has been provided to them. So I think while the government will be of BJP, but they will have to face these challenges, and this is, I think, a beginning of the next term of election, wherein probably there will be level playing field for both sides. Almost, this dent has created that initial, grounds for a comeback of some other allied group.
Alternative. Okay, so of course there are going to be some challenges as far as from within the alliance of National Democratic Alliance is concerned. So what about the opposition, which has been able to, as an alliance, able to grab 232 seats, Congress leading them with 99 at the top. How stronger this time the opposition is going to be, and what areas should be considered and capitalized or focused upon by the Congress in order to give a tougher time to the government if BJP really forms that?
A coalition government versus a coalition opposition. Normally the government has challenges because the expectation management on the part of government for their allies, enhances their vulnerabilities. Whereas the common objective of opposing the government and keeping their identity intact would keep them united. So I think challenges would be more uphill task for the in-government coalition as compared to the opposition. But what opposition can do, there have been a lot of legislations which were considered controversial or not representing the majority sentiments. They can, when possible, they can challenge those legislations. They can continue to harp on the public demands, the marginalized communities, with all minority groups in India, they are being marginalized, and then the people, majority of the people in the rural areas, if you remember the farmer agitation very recently. So there are so many groups, so many pressure points which can be managed to keep government on the back foot.
Right, Dr. Kausar, there's so many challenges, and a very important point made by Mr. Malik is going to be tougher for the government to keep all the allies intact, and it's going to be easier for the opposition to act as a tougher opposition and also bring in those public demands during this particular tenure. Do you foresee, with the number of seats Bharatiya Janata Party does have in Lok Sabha, and it being a challenge for it to keep the allies intact, completing this tenure for 5 years?
See, I mean, if you see on papers, BJP has the experience of dealing with the coalitions in past. But of course, in the last government, they had around 303 or 2 seats with the majority. So they were not that much dependent on the regional parties.
Back in 2018, 282 seats, not dependent again at that time?
Yes. And then now the situation that the factor of the regional parties as kingmakers, actually that's right now there's a lot of dependency on them. Of course it would be challenging, and of course once you have that sort of fragile coalition, you always invest a lot in domestic politics. You have a lot of domestic discussion issues. It's good for the minorities in the way that if you see during the elections and before, voices from the south were that they are linguistically and they have linguistically discriminated against, and then they have the minorities have the issues of sort of changing the constitution. If you see that there have been a lot of and BJP has been planning for that. For them, the good factor is that now they don't have that much majority to change the constitution, which was, I guess, their dream, and to bring lot of state under the center's power. That have been their dream as well. So it's not going to happen. This is a good positive factor for them as well.
If the BJP brings in that talk again, the change in the constitution, do you think there could be an expectation of certain allies, for example, the formerly with the Congress, the Telugu Desam Party and Janata Dal, breaking away from this alliance and going on the other side, or taking a different direction?
Right now, the regional for regional parties, the centralization is not their agenda. It's not. They are not supportive of it. That's what I am saying. Right now, their allies. Let's suppose they are going to make the government with the NDA alliance. Most of the parties, like these two parties that you have named, they have a lot of minority vote bank in constituency. It would be very difficult for them to sustain the BJP's hardcore politics and go back in their constituency. They won't buy that. So I don't expect Narendra Modi's politics would change, but of course the impact could be assessed. That the impact might not be the way it was before because of the majority, now the number of seats they got. Number second, I guess there's a larger realization that political parties would do that. How do the people make the decisions? It's of course quite premature to say that did Congress campaign influence that, or the BJP's hate campaign has been resisted. But I guess there's also a trend that how people make the decision, the information and the platforms that people now have, I guess they are quite influential and they are quite impactful in making their decisions, because with this time having a lot of state resources dominated by, I mean, even the Election Commission of India is popularly known as very independent, but right now they have been sort of compromised to if you see these speeches of the Prime Minister, they didn't say anything to the Prime Minister during the campaign, but still people make a lot of different decisions. So it's a challenge for the BJP and other political parties to see that people's overall decision making pattern have changed and they're making decisions, they're more independent and getting the more information sources and able to decide and judge by themselves. Of course, there would be, I don't have broader and bigger hopes from this government, of course, that the region's politics and the impact and everything would change. But of course,
so with the cut down size, do you think BJP is going to enjoy that similar sort of a freedom as far as the relations with the neighboring countries is concerned, especially what sort of impact this particular government of BJP with its allies, dependent on its allies, would bring it to bilateral relations with Pakistan?
In the past, if you see that Modi's particularly freedom to exercise international politics and foreign relation was on the front, because his domestic constituency in politics was so politically entrenched and popular that he had no such dependency on the coalition. But now I don't see that much freedom in his government one, and it's difficult to, you are involved in international political contested issues, you're part of larger many sort of associations and organizations, and that are politically sensitive and competitive. And then of course if you have the domestic politics, not that strong, and then of course you are dependent on allies, it's difficult to exert and have that influence that you had in the past.
So what an impact it might have when it comes to bilateral relations with Pakistan?
I don't see a bigger change. See, the political parties always thrives on its own constituency. If you want to see that there would be a massive change in BJP's politics towards within and outside the region, it won't happen, because the problem with such constituencies is that the constituency of hate actually has to be supplied further. It thrives on further, sort of extremist tendencies and ideology. So BJP would not leave their core constituency, that's obvious. The only hope is that opposition would come more strongly. And that could be a factor that could resist the pace of its influence actually.
Mr. Malik, what's your expectation when it comes to the regional dynamics, especially towards...
I would tend to agree with him, because the posturing that India does in its foreign policy vis-a-vis the neighbors and region at large, it does not draw strength from their domestics. It draws strength from the perception of the powers to be American policy for the region, the massive support that they get being the sole provider of a sense of a source for them to be in the policy of containing China. So all those things, they will be available to them as usual, even in the next regime also. So I don't think so there would be any relaxation, substantial change
right.
in the
Let me
partnership.
take this point to Dr. Asma. Dr. Asma, in your earlier take, you were of the view that perhaps there might be a relief for the neighboring countries with the BJP cut down to size in this particular government. Could you shed a little bit of more light on this? What makes you say so? But very briefly, please.
Yeah, this time when we say that the coalition government of BJP would be a weaker government, we need to include that the opposition in the Indian Parliament would be a stronger opposition, and this equation would not let Modi to act like a god and aggressive. And when I say that maybe the situation for the regional countries would be better, it is because maybe Modi think that if hatred, bigotry, violence, aggression, and Islamophobia couldn't bring him desired results in these elections, maybe this is time to try peace, peaceful coexistence, peaceful conflict resolution, and a sense of equality with the neighboring regional states. So this is what we can hope. And then when Modi would be so busy on the domestic front dealing with the coalition demands, dealing, if he would deal with the original actual problems of the Indian public, then maybe he would not have much time or and resources to subjugate neighboring states, to undermine their sovereignty and survival. Just he did in the case of Maldives, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan, even Bangladesh. Name one regional country which is in good terms with the Modi regime. So
That's a
this is
point
really
very well
important
made,
for him
Dr.
to
Asma.
think.
That is a very important point that you've made very well. Dr. Asma Shakir Khawaja, Executive Director, the Center for International Strategic Studies, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Air Vice Marshal Retired Ijaz Malik, Senior Analyst, thank you very much for joining in the studio. And Dr. Waqas Ali Kausar, Expert International Relations, thank you very much for your time. Also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.